Our lives have changed dramatically. It's kind of like we would have stepped on a giant roller coaster about 5 years ago and never got off yet. It's unbelievable how much our lives have changed.
Everyone thinks they know Troy Landry, the voice barking "choot 'em," the steady hands, the man who never flinch, no matter how big the gator or how dangerous the swamp. But legends don't come from nowhere, and they don't stay unbreakable forever. This isn't the version of swamp people you binge-watch. It's the side of Troy Landry that rarely makes it to television, the moments that forced even the king of the swamp to slow down and ask how much longer this life can keep taking from him. And now, as season 17 throws the bayou into chaos, the question isn't whether Troy can outwork the swamp anymore. The bayou's unbreakable king. Troy Landry was born on June the 9th, 1960, in the heart of Pierre Part, Louisiana, a tiny Cajun town where the Atchafalaya Basin isn't just a backdrop, it's blood and breath. Growing up in a multi-generational family of hunters and fishermen, Troy learned the ropes from his grandfather and father, men who turned survival into an art form. By his teens, he was knee-deep in the muck, wrestling gators and dodging snakes.
Come on, big boy.
Normalizing risks that would terrify outsiders. Cuts, bites, near drownings, they were just part of the rhythm, forging a resilience that's become his trademark. But speculate for a moment, did those early dangers plant the seeds for later battles? Or was it the price of a legacy passed down like a double-edged blade? Fast forward to 2010, when Swamp People premiered on the History Channel, catapulting Troy from local legend to national icon. His no-nonsense charm, family hunts, and unyielding drive earned him the title King of the Swamp, drawing millions who tuned in for the thrill. Over 17 seasons, he's built an empire, not just tags filled, but a brand of endurance that inspires. Yet, as waters fluctuate wildly this year, forcing adaptations like calling in son Chase when partner Pickle Wheat steps away for her new baby, you can't help but ask, is this environmental shakeup a harbinger of bigger changes for the Landry dynasty? The fame brought glory, but it also amplified the pressures. Troy's life seemed unbreakable, but beneath the fame, a storm was brewing in his body. The back pain and the first major surgery. You've seen Troy Landry charge through the swamps like a force of nature, hauling massive gators with raw power, his body a machine built for the bayou's brutal demands. But by 2021, after decades of heavy lifting, twisting in boats and wrestling beasts that could snap a man in half, something was breaking inside. The pain started subtly, aches in his back that he'd brush off as just another day in the life. In Troy's world, pain was normal, a badge of the trade. Cuts healed, bruises faded, and you kept going. But this was different. A cyst had grown around a nerve in his spine, compressing it like the swamp's vice grip, turning every move into agony. Troy, ever the stoic Cajun, powered through as long as he could. Fans watched him on season 12, filling tags with his sons. But off-camera, the toll was mounting. Speculate for a moment. Was the swamp's relentless grind finally catching up, wearing down the unbreakable king, or was this just a temporary bump in his endless hunt? Either way, it forced him to confront a vulnerability he couldn't shoot or outrun. In April 2021, he underwent back surgery to remove the cyst, a procedure that sidelined the legend for weeks, right before gator season loomed. He shared the update on Facebook, thanking fans for prayers. Everything went well, and I'm back home taking it easy for a couple of weeks. I should be ready to go for next gator season. The outpouring was massive. Fans rallying with messages of support, reminding him he's more than a hunter. He's an inspiration. Troy's pain mirrored the unseen struggles of every hard-working soul in the bayou. Recovery seemed swift, with Troy bouncing back to the swamps, but a darker threat loomed, one that would strike even closer to home. Prostate cancer diagnosis and fight. Just as Troy Landry was finding his rhythm again after back surgery, another blow landed, one that had nothing to do with age, strength, or experience in the swamp. In 2022, Troy revealed that he had been diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Troy Landry has been solely focusing on getting better. He was suffering from prostate cancer, ultimately had to go through surgery.
There was no dramatic announcement, just a straightforward update shared publicly, the same way he'd always handled things, calm, direct, and without panic. But the implications were heavy. This wasn't an injury you could tape up. This wasn't something rest and grit would fix. It was a diagnosis that forced even someone like Troy to confront uncertainty in a way he never had before. For fans, the news hit hard. This was the man who stared down animals designed to kill, who made danger look manageable, and now he was facing something invisible, something no amount of skill or toughness could outmaneuver. Treatment followed. Surgery, recovery. Troy continued to update supporters along the way, thanking people for prayers and encouragement. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from longtime viewers, fellow hunters, and people who had never set foot in a swamp but saw their own battles reflected in his. What stood out wasn't bravado. It was honesty. There were no speeches about fear, no dramatized reflections, just a man acknowledging the fight and taking it one step at a time. And when he finally returned to the swamp, back on the boat, back in the hunt, it wasn't framed as a victory lap. It was a return to normalcy, a signal that, for now, he'd made it through. Still, the question lingered beneath the surface. How does someone who has spent a lifetime controlling danger process a threat he can't see, aim at, or outwork? Troy beat cancer. He went back to doing what he loved. But surviving something like that changes the math. It shifts how risk feels, how time is measured. And while one health battle was behind him, the swamp, unpredictable as ever, wasn't done testing him. Health battles won, but the swamp held more surprises. The 2024 citation and reputational ripples. For most of his career, Troy Landry's reputation had been remarkably clean. In a profession tightly regulated by wildlife laws and constantly scrutinized by cameras, that alone is a rare. Which is why what happened in 2024 stood out. That year, Troy was cited by Louisiana wildlife officials for an alligator tagging violation. On paper, it wasn't explosive, no dramatic courtroom scenes, no criminal charges, just a citation tied to how harvested gators were tagged, an administrative rule designed to track and protect the species. This was Troy Landry, a man who had built his public image on respect for the swamp and its rules, someone often portrayed as the standard-bearer for ethical hunting, so even a minor slip carried weight. Supporters were quick to frame it as an oversight, something that can happen in a high-pressure season where quotas, crew coordination, and unpredictable conditions collide. Critics, however, saw something else, a rare crack in the armor. The timing didn't help. Troy had just come off serious health scares. Season demands were intensifying, environmental conditions were becoming harder to manage, and suddenly, instead of being discussed only as a survivor and symbol, his name appeared in official paperwork. For a reality TV star, that shift matters, because once you're positioned as a legend, expectations stop being reasonable. They become absolute. Every mistake gets magnified, every misstep invites speculation. Was this simply human error in a demanding job?
Though safer to hunt in pairs, with the end of python season approaching, they decide splitting up.
Or was it a sign that the pressure, physical, mental, and professional, was finally starting to show? The citation didn't end Troy's career. It didn't erase his legacy, but it did something quieter and more unsettling. It reminded people that even icons operate inside systems that don't bend for reputation. And as Troy dealt with the ripple effects of that moment, something far heavier was unfolding beyond paperwork and public image, loss that cut much deeper than any citation ever could, because personal woes soon paled next to community losses. Friends' deaths and unearthed secrets. By 2025, the bayou had taken on a different tone. It wasn't just dangerous, it felt haunted by absence. That year, the Swamp People family lost Junior Edwards, a familiar face to longtime viewers and a respected hunter in his own right.
My name is William Edwards. I'm from Blackman, Louisiana. We was hunting alligators, putting out hooks one day.
Junior wasn't just a cast member. He represented the same old-school grit and lived knowledge that defined the show's early years. His death rippled through the community quietly but deeply.
Swamp people are mourning one of its stars. Randy Edwards died Saturday in a crash in Iberville Parish,
leaving behind stories instead of scenes. Not long after, another loss followed. Mr. Sterling, another figure tied to the swamp's long memory, passed away, adding to a growing sense that an era was thinning out. These weren't headline-grabbing tragedies. They were the kind that hit harder precisely because they happened off camera, away from the spectacle. For Troy, these weren't just names in a tribute post. They were people who understood the swamp the same way he did. People who shared unspoken rules, inherited risk, and a way of life that doesn't leave room for sentimentality until it's gone. Then came something stranger. In the same period, human remains were discovered in the swamp, unearthed by shifting water and erosion. Authorities handled the investigation, but the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone who lived there. The bayou, long known for keeping its secrets, had given one back. It stirred unease. Among locals, whispers followed, not in a supernatural sense, but in a cultural one. The swamp gives, the swamp takes, and sometimes it reminds you who's really in control. Loss stacked on loss, familiar faces gone, memories resurfacing in unexpected ways. For Troy, the weight wasn't dramatic, it was cumulative. Grief doesn't arrive all at once in places like Pierre Part. It settles slowly, between seasons, between hunts. And as he processed the loss of friends and the quiet warnings of the land itself, another struggle was unfolding even closer to home. Grief, it turned out, was only part of what his family was about to face. Crew's liver disease and a community rally. Of all the battles Troy Landry has faced, this one hit him in a place no gator ever could, his family. In the middle of everything else, Troy revealed that his grandson, Crew, was fighting a serious liver disease. It wasn't introduced with drama or TV polish. It came quietly, through family posts and community appeals. And somehow, that made it heavier. Crew was just a child. For a man who had spent his life protecting others, his sons, his crew, his way of life, this was a fight he couldn't muscle through or outwork. There was no season timeline, no quota to hit, just hospital visits, long waits, and unanswered questions. Troy did something rare for someone built on strength. He asked for help. Fundraisers were organized. Support poured in from fans, neighbors, and people who had never set foot in the bayou but felt connected to the Landry name. Messages flooded in, not about gators or episodes, but about prayers, hope, and standing together. Watching Troy navigate this moment changed how many people saw him, not as the king of the swamp, but as a grandfather facing the kind of fear that doesn't care about reputation or toughness. It raised quiet questions no one wanted to say out loud. Is this the cost of a hard life passed down through generations? Or is it simply a reminder that time, health, and family are never guaranteed? For Troy, the focus shifted. Fame didn't matter. Legacy didn't matter. Only Crew did. And while the community rallied around the Landrys, the world outside didn't slow down. The swamp kept moving. The seasons kept coming. Because just as the family leaned into survival of a different kind, nature was preparing another test. As Season 17 dawned, new environmental storms hit. Season 17's water chaos and team shifts. Season 17 didn't begin with celebration. It began with confusion. Unpredictable weather patterns, driven by heavy northern rainfall, threw the Atchafalaya Basin into chaos. Water levels swung wildly. Some areas flooded overnight.
Flooding in the Atchafalaya Basin has been a concern for years, and tonight local leaders and residents are coming together to discuss their plan.
Others dropped so low that boats struggled to move. Routes Troy had relied on for decades suddenly didn't behave the way they always had. The swamp wasn't playing by the old rules anymore. For hunters, that kind of instability isn't just inconvenient, it's dangerous. Traps get lost, gators disappear, or show up where they shouldn't. Every decision carries more risk, and every mistake costs time they don't have. On top of that, Troy's trusted partner, Pickle Wheat, stepped back during the season to focus on her newborn. It was a joyful reason, but it left gaps that had to be filled fast. Once again, family stepped in. His son, Chase, returned to help shoulder the load, bringing familiarity into an increasingly unfamiliar environment. What unfolded on screen wasn't just a hunt, it was adaptation in real time. Troy adjusted strategies, changed routes, took calculated risks. Not because he wanted to prove anything, but because stopping wasn't an option. This wasn't just a job, it was how his family survived, how traditions stayed alive. Still, the question lingered beneath every scene. When nature itself starts turning unpredictable, how long can old ways hold? Season 17 quietly reframed Troy's story, not as dominance over the swamp, but negotiation with it. Less about control, more about endurance. And through the floods, the shifting teams, and the mounting pressure, one thing became clear. The swamp hadn't beaten Troy Landry, but it was asking something different from him now, something deeper, something that would test not just his strength, but his legacy. Bonds tested by the tide. With shifting water levels and mounting pressure in Season 17, Troy leaned harder than ever on the people who knew him best, his sons, Chase and Jacob. These weren't just backup hunters stepping into frame.
Somebody messes with your lines or something like that. Chase, what's that on the... Oh, yeah, look. See him in that pocket?
These were men raised in the same mud, shaped by the same risks, now carrying weight that used to rest solely on their father's shoulders. On the surface, it looked like business as usual, father and sons running lines, counting tags, reading water. But underneath, the dynamic had changed. To keep morale high, and maybe to distract from the tension, Troy introduced friendly bets. Who could land the biggest gator? Who would fill their quota first? Small stakes, lots of laughs, the kind of competition that turns pressure into fuel. Still, those moments carried more meaning than the show let on, because these hunts weren't just about winning, they were about trust, about whether the next generation could adapt to a swamp that no longer behaves the way it did when Troy was their age. Every missed gator, every rerouted plan, quietly raised the same question. Can tradition survive change without breaking the bonds that built it? For Troy, watching his son step up was both reassuring and sobering. Pride mixed with the realization that time moves forward whether you're ready or not. The swamp doesn't wait. Neither does legacy. And while the bets brought laughter, they also highlighted something deeper. This was no longer just Troy's fight. The Landry name, the way of life, the responsibility to endure, it was being shared. Business ventures and cultural legacy. Troy Landry's legacy was never meant to end at the edge of the swamp. Beyond swamp people, he quietly built something more stable. Businesses designed to last longer than any TV season. Income from the show opened doors, but Troy didn't rely on fame alone. He invested in what he knew: people, place, and culture. There was the restaurant, guiding tours, appearances rooted in Cajun identity rather than celebrity flash. Together, they formed a safety net, not just financially, but culturally, a way to keep traditions alive while the world around them changed. Estimates of Troy's net worth vary, but the numbers matter less than how he earned it. This wasn't fast money. It was layered, patient, and tied to community. Every venture reinforced the same message. The swamp isn't something you exploit. It's something you steward. That philosophy mattered more than ever as tragedy piled up. Still, a quiet uncertainty lingered. Troy Landry's journey isn't just a story of gators, grit, or fame. It's a story of endurance, of a man who's faced nature, illness, loss, and change, and still found a way to rise. From the early days in Pierre Part to the chaotic waters of Season 17, he's carried the weight of family, tradition, and a legacy that runs deeper than any swamp. Yes, the pain has been real. The health scares, legal tangles, and family struggles could have ended any ordinary life. But Troy is far from ordinary. Each challenge has reshaped him, strengthened his bonds with his sons, and pushed him to preserve the culture he loves. And yet, the story isn't finished. The waters of the bayou keep shifting. Seasons change, new generations rise. Troy's next chapter is unwritten, and the question lingers: will the king of the swamp redefine his legacy once more, Or will the tides finally demand a price he can't pay? What do you think Troy's future holds? Share your thoughts below and make sure to like and subscribe for the next untold chapter of life in the bayou. The story of survival isn't over, it's just beginning. Troy Landry's journey has shown the hidden costs of life in the swamp. What seemed like unstoppable grit hides battles most never see. For more untold stories from the bayou, like and subscribe. The story of survival is still unfolding.